All right, we have Overwhelm, baby. Shurima Overwhelm. So, if you guys don't know, this guy, Rico Rex, he likes Overwhelm a little bit. This deck is based off of a deck that he had posted up a little bit ago. I want to say like a couple days ago. And there's a couple changes to it, but for the most part, it's the same deck, and it smacks. This thing is fun, and I mean, it wins games pretty quick, too, as you're going to see here in the next two games that we go over. So basically, we got some Renekton action and Sejuani. So my name is Shit Just Works. As always, going to go over the deck itself, followed by two sweet victories. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of these new Shurima cards paired with some old school Overwhelm. Alright, so here we go. As always, there's going to be a link in the description below to the Mobilytics deck as well as the deck code itself. If you guys want to go ahead and net deck the hell out of this, because I highly recommend it. It's hella fun. Definitely do that. So anyways, without further ado, we got the Overwhelm deck, and obviously focusing on none other than Sejuani and Renekton, as I mentioned before. Renekton, new champion, pretty freaking good last time I checked. The problem with Renekton is his level 1 requiring challenge, and this card, last time I checked, does not have challenger. So that does mean we are going to need to run some of the vulnerable options in Shurima and Freljord. Now, I say and Freljord, I don't really think we have, I mean, other than Sejuani technically giving vulnerable, there's no other Freljord vulnerable stuff, but does bring into consideration some interesting cards that have really never seen any play, like Caught in the Cold, Frostbite, and Vulnerable. Seems decent now that we have something like Renekton to kind of pair this with. Not quite playing it in the deck just yet. Maybe this will be some sort of control-y type option in the future. But until then, we got Rockhopper. This card, so good. So good with Renekton. Even without Renekton, when you're able to do something like Omen Hawk on 1, like, let's say you have the attack token on turn 2. Omen Hawk on 1 buffs your units. If you draw into Rockhopper, that's even better because now it's going to be a 4-2. But even if you don't Omen Hawk it, and you just have the Omen Hawk on 1, followed by Rockhopper that you had in your opening hand on 2, now that dissuades your opponent from playing anything with like 1 health, even like an Avarosian Sentry, like you see right here. Because you can pull it with the Omen Hawk, and then you're still able to push that 3 damage with the Rockhopper, which feels really nice. You know, 3 damage early game is not to be understated. That is pretty significant. Then we obviously are also running 3 ruthless Predator, because it's Renekton's champion spell and it's hella good. If only because of the +2 attack, right? It's the same exact reason why we're running 3 Shape Stone, which, by the way, pretty freaking good. It's basically Elixir of Iron for Shurima with a little bit of downside, a little bit of upside. Honestly, the downside isn't really that bad because generally speaking, you'll have played a Rockhopper at some point and you'll get the +3, +1. Feels bad if you don't draw a Rockhopper before it, but hey, what can you do? Otherwise, you get some typical stuff like Troll Chant. There is a Fury of the North in here. You can keep that. You can put something else in if you want. I don't think that's in Rico Rex's original version of the deck. Wolf Rider, I'm up in the air about. I don't really like it, but when you take a look at some of the other 4-drops, there's not crazy good options as far as that's concerned. Aversion Outrider seems good, but obviously you need that Allegiance to actually get proc for it to work well. Right in Negation, I guess, could be an option if you're worried about stuff like that, but there's really no other good Overwhelm options, so we're kind of just forced into playing Wolf Rider. Getting his Plunder effect is really not easy in this deck. I think we see it in like the first game. It is doable, but not the greatest. Ancient Yeti, what can we say? Ancient Yeti is usually in these aggressive type Overwhelm decks. And most importantly, my favorite card, Battle Fury, baby. This somehow still seems to always catch people by surprise. They don't play around the 8-mana burst speed spell. I mean, they should. I mean, if you're playing somebody who's higher on ladder, you're probably going to run into them just playing around it. But this can usually sneak out, especially in some of those lower ranks on ladder. You can usually sneak out some victories with Battle Fury. So, with that said, I'm going to shut up now. We're going to go ahead and get into this deck. It is super, super fun, but you guys can see for yourself. All right, first up, we are going up against a Demacia Targon deck, which hopefully I hover over in a second because I completely forget what champions we're up against here. But I'm sure I will. But we have, like I was mentioning before, we actually have the attack token on turn 2 here with the Omen Hawk on turn 1 going into a non-Omen Hawk buffed Rockhopper. Now, we're going to have to wait to kind of see what our opponent has, but getting this Roiling Sands out with our opponent on 3 mana means that we're likely dissuading them from playing anything. Even if it's a 2 health minion or 2 health follower. Wow, minion, that's a throwback. Even if it's a 2 health follower, we're still going to be able to pull it with Omen Hawk and push that 3 damage, which is going to feel real nice. So we do get the Solari Priestess, however, which is still going to feel really good with that Roiling Sands. That's something that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration with Roiling Sands. Your opponent does kind of have to play around it, right? Especially if they're trying to prepare for a Renekton coming down on 4, and we have the attack token on 4. So it's going to feel real nice being able to get this Renekton down. The problem is this, you could argue here, we could have kind of slow played this Renekton a little bit, because I do think this just gets straight up removed here in a second. I'm not sure. Or maybe not. No, because technically they don't have... All right, so I think what I was thinking was they don't have, like, single combat or concerted strike, but obviously they just played a... Solari Priestess, so looks like they took the falling comet, unfortunately. So yeah, but generally speaking, they're going to have to play around that Renekton coming down. That's the Omen Hawk attack that I was talking about, which actually is going to push 6 damage here because of the second Rockhopper coming down, and we still have a Roiling Sands as well. So just Roiling Sands in general, super, super good card early game. It really affects and impacts how your opponent plays. You know, how they actually go about their early turns and what units they're playing versus what units they're not. We do get the Omen Hawk buff on this. Oh my god. All right. This is one of my favorite Overwhelm units right now. And the name is completely escaping me. This spell shielded up 7/5 that we got. This unit is really what like pulls this deck together. Mainly, honestly, because it's such a good 5-drop Overwhelm unit. You know, like, we have Ancient Yeti starts as a 7-drop. Technically, it's got the stats of, like, a 5-drop. But generally, you're not playing it on 5, right? And same, like, Wolf Rider. We were just talking about how Wolf Rider really didn't provide... Like, it's just in there because there's no other 4-drop with Overwhelm that's really that great. It just seems like the only option, right? Well, this spell-shielded 5-drop, this is exactly... I think it's Ruin Runner. Ruin... Wow. Ruin Runner. Ruin Runner is perfect. Like, this is what really brings this deck together, allowing Shurima and Freljord to kind of link together there, because we got Ruin Runner on 5, and then we have the Alpha Wildclaw on 6. So we're able to kind of ramp up like that, you know, towards the mid to late game, as we're seeing here, right? Now, we actually decided to go for the open attack there, which did allow us to get off this this plunder effect. Again, it's not typical that you're going to get that. The reason why we did that, a couple reasons. Obviously, it's against Targon. Open attacking is generally a little bit better. But the way that our mana worked out, now we're able to get down this Alpha Wildclaw. We still hold up mana for the Troll Chant if we need it. And then we'll have 3 spell mana going into turn 8 with 9 mana. And then that also allows us to play Alpha Wildclaw back-to-back with Sejuani on the next turn. It's going to feel real nice. I don't even know if our opponent attacks. Yeah, so we didn't even need the Troll Chant, but at least we held up the mana for it alongside the spell mana. We actually draw another Ruin Runner too, which is pretty insane. Ruin Runner is just nasty. I don't even know. I think we just open attack again. Yeah. So because now our opponent summoned the Fangs and we have the Solari Priestess, there's a good chance that there might be a Supernova in hand because they have the 2 Celestials that just played this Solari. Actually, Solari Priestess is 4. Never mind. There's no Supernova in hand. I take it all back. It's only 4, 5, and 6. Either way, again, you can see how this vulnerable tag really just also pulls the deck together here. This is threatening lethal on the first attack, regardless of the lifesteal unit, right? You know, very typical combat interaction. Remember, if you guys are new to the game, always pull the lifesteal all the way to the right because it will trigger last and get you the victory before that. We do enough damage. We do enough damage here. Outside of 2 Star Shapings. They had 1. Even if they had 2, they would have still needed more heal. That's how much damage Overwhelm decks can do. Just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. All right. Second game here. Now, This is not LeBlanc Ashe, I don't think. Man, I'm terrible. I'm not like covering these decks. What the freak is wrong with me? So, I will say this is okay. All right. So Sejuani, Lissandra. I will say generally mid-range Frostbite actually I think is really good right now. Then again, I feel like that just happens at the beginning of every format. Swain also seems kind of good right now, but I digress. So anyways, we got Lissandra and Sejuani, kind of this like mid-range, I guess, Freljord Noxus type deck, built a little bit differently. We do get the Sandhopper early on as well, which feels really nice. So, and again with the Omen Hawk. So, and Omen Hawk really, you know, it's obviously it's in this deck to provide the top 3 units +1/+1. That feels really good on any sort of overwhelm unit, right? But when you have these vulnerable tags, suddenly this 1/1 kind of token like, you know, follower is pretty impactful, being able to pull units that you don't want involved in combat off to the side. I don't think that's actually what we use the Omen Hawk for here. But just, you know, keep, like, I can't stress enough how awesome this vulnerable mechanic is inside Shurima and Freljord with Overwhelm, right? It's not something that when typically the old school kind of Noxus Freljord Overwhelm has a little bit more over-the-top damage, but doesn't have that sort of board-centric control that this has with Overwhelm, which feels really, really nice. So, but we got Rune Runner again. And we're just seeing the impact here, right? We're going up against Freljord Noxus, which could have Frostbite, right? Could have just removal, right? I mean, it's 4 health, so, you know, it's going to take a little bit to actually remove the Ruin Runner, but obviously there's Noxian Guillotine, there's Scorched Earth, things like that, that can, after a little bit of damage, get rid of it, but that Spell Shield makes it that much harder. And when you're going up against Noxus, honestly, having Spell Shield is going to be hard to get through. Now, PNZ, a little bit easier time dealing with that, which is why I think I played Ezreal Swain with this deck against Ezreal Swain, and it got pretty wrecked, I'm not going to lie. Ezreal Swain feeling real nice right now. But, yeah, but the Spell Shield just allows it to be so sticky. And again, 5 Rune Runner, 6 Wild Claw. Feels super good. Here is the Death's Hand into probably either Flock or, you know, Guillotine or Scorched Earth onto this this Alpha Wild Claw, which, I mean, that's to be expected. But at this point, what that Rune Runner allows us to do is, because generally when you're playing big overwhelm units, you're playing one unit to the board, and then your opponent deals with it, right? And then you play another big unit to the board. Your opponent deals with it, right? Maybe you get the damage through before it's dealt with, but then they slowly get tempo back, right? And then they stabilize, and then, you know, maybe they can win the game. In this case, with Rune Runner is a big overwhelm unit that's going to stick there, generally, right? Like, PNZ can deal with it, but generally in most matchups, it's going to stick there for a little while, which allows you to then pair it with another large overwhelm unit. And when you get 2 large overwhelm units to stick to the board, suddenly it's a little bit more of a problem for your opponent to deal with, unless they're playing with something like Shadow Isles, where you're going to have that Vengeance and Ruination, you know, hard removal. Now, this is a pain, which is why we're playing the Troll Chant here, which does still allow us to remove this Crimson Disciple. Saves a little bit of damage on the Rune Runner, because putting it down to 2, I think, is not good. Now it actually will just stay at the 4 health. Now it's outside of Flock and stuff like that, and that's really what we want to play around, is our units being damaged and being removed, right? This does, however, pop a Spell Shield, which feels a little bit bad. That is a new, easy way for Freljord to pop the Spell Shields. A little bit different version of I still think it's a crappier Avalanche, but hey, whatever. So yeah, now we have Renekton, and we have another Alpha Wild Claw, and it kind of just makes sense to play the Alpha Wild Claw going into our next open attack. I don't know if we actually... Never mind. This makes way more sense. Ruthless Raider into Renekton. So we actually go even wider. Nothing we can do about this Sejuani picking off our Rune Runner, but we're able to go wider than our opponent, have at least 3 overwhelm units, and that's kind of the thing with this deck. As long as you have like 1 undamaged overwhelm unit, generally you could pick up the game with just a single Battle Fury, right? Like, I have won plenty of games with this deck too, where I'm doing like 16 plus damage with a single unit, just because of, like, I don't know, Ruthless Predator and Battle Fury, like, combined. Now all of a sudden I'm doing like 20-0 in 1 turn, right? And that's, I mean, here we're actually doing it with multiple units, but you get the point, right? You can make some pretty damn big units in this deck. And you can see too, don't forget Renekton's effect, by the way. With his challenge, he does gain a little bit of health as well. But again, that's why vulnerable works out in this deck. That's why we need it paired with Renekton. And that's why you should play some sweet, sweet overwhelm goodness. All right, so a new style of overwhelm. I kind of like that there's now, you know, Freljord Noxus, which is by no means bad. But now there's also the Shurima version of overwhelm, which I'm hoping to see in one of the tournaments this weekend. I know Fight Night didn't really have a whole lot of Shurima, period. So hopefully the OLS this weekend, we'll see some Shurima action. We'll see some overwhelm action, and we'll get to see some spice like the deck that we just went over here. So again, everything's going to be in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, all that good stuff. Don't forget to subscribe. I feel like I should put up that graphic where it's like only like 10% of my views or subscribers or whatever. I don't know. But just subscribe, all right? Lots of Legends of Runeterra content. And as always, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you. And peace out.